What's going on, everybody? Back again with another episode of your favorite podcast, which everyone knows is Keeping It Rio. And ladies and gentlemen, today I have an awesome guest I'm really looking forward to talking with here. We just met Josh, about 2 minutes ago? And I'm very much looking forward to what we've got to discuss today, because the truth is, a couple days ago, I went on Facebook, and there are many forums there where you can find interesting folks to speak with on your podcasts. And I put a post out looking for someone fun just to tell me some funny stories relative to absolutely nothing other than just being funny. And this young man here was the first one to reply. So it is an absolute honor to welcome to Keeping It Rio, my friend, Josh Hatcher. Josh, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks, man. I haven't been called a young man in a while. I'm actually turning 46 in 1 week. And everybody thinks that I don't look 46, and I tell them it's because the fat pushes out the wrinkles.
Well, hey, I'll tell you the truth. I am 46 as well. So we're definitely going to have a great story time because we've lived the same life. I'm about 3 months older than you. In that 3 months time, I don't remember anything. So we'll have a good convo today.
Gen X all the way, baby.
That's right. And I think that makes for the most fun conversation. So tell me a little bit about yourself, my friend. How's everything going?
Yeah, man. Well, that's a loaded question today because the past 2 weeks have been like, have you ever had those 2 weeks from hell, like where everything wrong happens?
I had like 2 years from hell. I just got over them.
So I'm going to go backward, and I'm not going to like complain, but I'm just going to go backward, like all of the craziness of the past couple weeks. So last night I got pulled over going 48 and a 35. The cop was generous and only decided to cite me for the fact that my muffler was disconnected, which is a $25 fine, except the government's going to tack on a bunch of fees. So it'll be $175. No big deal. But my daughter's getting married on my birthday next week. So we've like totally dumped all this money into this very simple wedding, but it's still a lot of money. On top of the fact that we needed 4 new tires last week on Zoe's vehicle so that my wife could drive down. She's a preacher, so she had to go down to do her grandfather's funeral in Maryland. And my dog is sick and can barely get up, so I have to like carry him outside so he can go poop. And he's like a golden retriever, so he's big, like, dude, the world is falling apart. I'm okay, but the world's falling apart. So,
Yeah, and it's all about perspective. At this time, that's what I tell myself. I'm going to go crazy if I let that happen. And I've come to the conclusion that I don't want to go crazy. I've spent several years chasing that and wondering what the hell was wrong with me and wondering, why is everything going wrong? And then I realized, it's not really going wrong. It's just teaching me, and it's showing me how strong I can be. So we'll pull through this together, my friend.
Well, my theory on crazy is everybody's crazy in varying degrees. So you're already crazy. So
that's it. And what is the definition? Yeah. What's the definition of crazy? I have no idea.
Yeah. Everybody's crazy, like everybody's got that one thing that they're just like really weird about, there's this whole thing now on the internet where people are deciding that they want to identify as, and then they'll pick whatever thing they want to identify as now. So, like autism or bipolar or whatever. And no problem. Some of those things they're very real struggles that people have. But now everybody's getting on the internet and then they're self-diagnosing, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like there's enough crazy to go around. We don't need to and if autism is a spectrum, right? If it's a spectrum, everybody's autistic.
To some degree, I think so as well.
Like everybody's autistic about something.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because in the history of my podcast here, which is 3 years old, and I believe we're on episode, I think today is going to be 170, 171, somewhere in that neighborhood. I've only had one episode that I didn't actually play. And I hope this nice lady's not watching today, because she'll know. But it was one of those. It was a self-diagnosed. Basically, she self-diagnosed her entire family, and they had all kinds of crazy ailments going on and midway through the story, I started thinking to myself, there's no way I can play this, because like, I don't want people thinking that I'm nuts like this. And, she was well involved into the story, and she loved every bit of it. And all of her family had all these crazy things going on, and none of them were actually officially diagnosed, but she was sure of it. So I'm with you.
Right. It's like everybody's a narcissist today, you know? It's like like everybody's always complaining about how, you know, evil narcissism is, and I'm like, the more that they complain about it and they start talking about it, I'm like, you realize how narcissistic that sounds, right?
It's completely over the head when you're, it's definitely not me. I'm identifying someone else who's
Right.
doing that. And it's funny, I grew up with my dad who textbook narcissist, right?
Right.
And he always, it was so ironic to me. He was the most self-unaware human being I've ever known. Like he had no idea what people were thinking about him. And he thought he was, just the king of the world. And I remember one day he started in on some lady that we knew, and he said, XYZ there, she's a narcissist. She tries to push everything that she believes on people, and she just, needs to shut up and stop with her opinions. And then he came with some ridiculous opinion immediately thereafter. And I thought, well, pot kettle, you're black, and it is what it is. Everybody's a narcissist to some degree, though. Heck, I like myself. I feel like I'm looking pretty good today. If that makes me a narcissist, then all right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the issue, man, is like we talk a lot about that on my podcast at Manlyhood. Just that, like, really, we need to focus less on everybody else and focus more on ourselves. Like a lot of guys will reach out to me and they'll be like, man, my marriage is falling apart. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, okay, well, stop trying to save your marriage and start trying to fix yourself. Like, but she's cheated on me, or she's acting like this, or my wife is all this problem. You can't fix her. You can't change her. Work on you, dude. Work on you. That's where it starts. And if she, the bottom line is if you can't save your marriage and you worked on you, then you're strong enough to face it falling apart. And if she leaves you and then you worked on you and now you're better for the rest of your life, like you're going to be okay. And if she stays with you because you've changed, then you win. Either way, you win because you're better. And and that's kind of my approach to that. Like I think that's really honestly the only person in this world that you can actually change is yourself. You can influence, you can lead, you can encourage other people, but you can't change anybody. And I think that's, yeah, I don't know. I think that's something that most of the world just really needs to embrace, that like the one person we need to really deal with is ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the toughest conversation you can have sometimes, is admitting the fact that we're not perfect and maybe we have a couple little flaws that we need to work on. But once you realize that, and once you're truthful with yourself and you look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe it's really not everybody else's issue. Maybe I am the common denominator in all these problems. And you start actually focusing on making it better. It's amazing how much stuff you can accomplish and how much happier you end up being. So I definitely can appreciate that.
Yeah. So Chuck, you mentioned that you like to hear funny stories.
I do. I have a good energy about myself. I'm a sales guy by heart. I own a roofing company, so I get to talk to a lot of homeowners. And one of the things that I just love, and the reason why I started the podcast, was I just like to hear funny things from people. And everybody's got a story to share that will make the world crack up. I just want to provide the opportunity and the platform for people to do that. And honestly, it is Saturday morning. It's 9:10 a.m. I want to laugh today, man. I want to start my day off with something that's going to propel me into my roofing appointments this afternoon, where I go to them and I tell a funny joke about the guy on my podcast this morning that told me a funny story about. And that's why we're here today. So what kind of funny stories do you have, Josh, that you can provide to the world that we can mutually crack up to?
Well, so not everybody knows this, but most people that know me well know that my father was a professional birthday clown.
Nice. Okay, we've got something to talk about. I love
Yeah,
it.
dude, stories like crazy stories, like my entire life. Like, so he started doing it like right before I was born. So my entire life, I knew nothing any different, right? Um, and he started doing it like he was going to a like a Bible college, and they were doing like where they'd go in to do like street ministry, right? So they'd like go into the street and make animal balloons for kids, or do like little magic tricks and just kind of like invite them to come to some vacation Bible school program or something. And he found that when you do clowning as a ministry, it's people don't take it seriously. They're like, yeah, Jesus is funny, and then they don't You know what I mean? They don't get it. So he's like, that doesn't work, but I really like this clowning thing. So he started doing, like marching in parades and doing birthday parties for kids. And so, he always had a job, working at a factory or a grocery store, whatever job, the stone quarry, whatever job he needed to do. And then on the side, he would do birthday parties. Um, and so forever, as long as I can remember, he would do like all of my friends growing up at some point had my dad come to their party to at least one of their birthday parties as a kid. And every kid in town had, we grew up in a real small town, had Yogi the Clown come to be at, the clown at their birthday party. And he'd go to nursing homes. Nursing homes were great because they were a great place to practice. You'd go to the nursing home usually for free, kind of as a volunteer, and he would go, and it would be a great place to just kind of practice. And as a little kid, I would dress up and I'd go with him. So, in the old people always loved, the cute little clowns that would, my little brother and I would go, and they loved us. We were great. But I didn't always go with him, but we went sometimes. Well, my dad he would tell amazing stories and crazy things that would happen to him in his life as a clown. And I've similar experiences in my life with him as well. I think my favorite story, he had these big yellow pants on suspenders, and my dad was a big guy, big, round man. And so his pants were, I think, like 5 yards of fabric, so that he was already big and the pants were bigger. Big baggy yellow pants held up with suspenders and elastic. Like they weren't like hanging on him, but they were just big baggy pants.
A clown, I gotcha.
Yeah. And this old lady comes up and she grabbed the front of his pants and pulled them all the way out and stuck her head way down in there and says, "You got anything on under there?"
Oh my.
And
Yogi. What's
yeah.
going on, Yogi? Tell me what you
Fortunately, he
got.
did. Fortunately, he did, but he was propositioned. He was propositioned by an old lady in the nursing home, and she said, "Hey, I never slept with a clown before." And he was like, "You're not gonna today either, hun."
Yeah, that's gonna be a story for the next clown.
Then he did a kid's birthday party. He's coming home, and he pulls over to get gasoline at at the convenience store or whatever. He's pumping gas, and this car full of young bachelorettes, it's a bachelorette party, pulls up. They're like, "Look, we're having a bachelorette party. Have you ever thought about being a stripper?" Like, you know, and dad's not like, it's not like you would want to see him naked, right? I mean, they think it'd be hilarious. And my dad says, "Well, I tell you what, here's my card, and this is my home phone number on it. You call Mrs. Yogi the Clown, and you ask her if it's okay with her. And if she says yes, then I'll come." Knowing full well that my mom is not going to be okay with that. Of course, they didn't call, but so yeah, we could tell stories about my dad being a clown all day. So I think the best one is this. It gets a little bit gross. Are you okay with a little bit gross?
I love gross stories. They're my favorite.
So dad's driving home from a clown party and he's got to take a dump, right? Like he's been holding it in the whole time. He wants to get home because nothing's worse than going, to a gas station,
In
and
clown regalia.
right.
I gotcha.
And he's driving a little fast. He gets pulled over. And he farts, as the cop is walking up to the car. He rolls down the window and the cop sees a clown and smells like the absolute, it's like green fumes coming out of the car. The cop is like, "Oh," like this cop, has probably walked in on dead bodies that have been rotting for a month. And this has the cop shocked, he's like, "Whoa." And he says, "Sir, do you know how fast you were going?" And he says, "I'm really sorry, officer. I've really got to poop." And he says, "Can I see your license and registration?" And dad pulls out his license and hands him his business card too, right? And so the cop, keeps the card and hands him his license back and just says, just go home. Just don't speed. So dad gets home, he does his business, he gets his shower, gets his clown makeup off, and then the phone rings. And it's the state police barracks. This is Chief so and so, I'm the sergeant here at the state police barracks, and I just I have a question for you. And he was like, I understand you had an encounter with this officer tonight, and I I don't need all the details. I just want to know, is the story he's telling me true? And my dad said, whatever he told you, it's absolutely true.
That's
So
beautiful right there. I love that they research and make sure that hey, yeah, the reason I'm late for whatever is because I had a clown pulled over. He's shitting his pants and everything. That's tough to believe. That's the modern day version of my dog ate my homework, and I really appreciate that very much, because I can only imagine what the story was in the police department from this officer that would warrant the chief giving a call, because that's just wonderful right there, and perfect timing by your dad.
yeah.
Once you roll that window down and the cop kind of says, "Oh, you're pretty much good to go. You're not going to get arrested at that point."
Yeah, for sure. I was broke when I was I had a bunch of little kids and lost a job, and I decided I was going to do some clowning and needed a little extra money. So my dad would invite me when he would have a big event and he needed an extra set of hands. I mean, then I had learned all those skills as a kid. Like, I actually have thought about like now, now that my dad's gone, and I really think he was one of the best clowns because he actually knew his stuff, right? He did the research, he put the time in, he knew how to do the work. And he taught me everything he knew. So I think like I should make like a clown course and put it on the internet. I actually don't want to be a clown. It's really painful for me now that my father's passed, so it's hard to do, but plus I don't have the same patience level that he had with the kids. Actually, it's the parents that get me. Like, the parents, I'm like, you need a punch in the teeth, and that would not go well for me to punch you in the teeth because of the way you're acting. So, because I'm dressed like a clown and all the kids are going to be scared of clowns after that. So, I have a hard time with that. My dad was so great. He could just diffuse any situation. But I thought about teaching a clown class and putting it on the internet, making $1 million or something. But anyway, I went with my dad to do a birthday party, and like, it was like a really long drive, and we're coming home from this long drive, and we stop at McDonald's. And by the way, that was a common thing my entire life. You know, dad's clowning was the mad money. That was how our family could go out to dinner on Saturday. You know what I mean? Dad would
Yep.
do a clown party, he'd come home, he would pick us up, and then we'd go out to eat. That was how we got to do fun things, was because dad did a clown party. So he'd get $50 or $100 or whatever, and that was what we used to go do something fun. So we would go out to eat with dad still dressed as a clown.
Nice. I love
It
it.
never registered to us that we were sitting around the table with a clown, because that was just normal, and everybody would be staring, and it was just normal. And you know like, certain restaurants, they would get used to it, they'd get to know him, but it was always a fun experience once we started to realize what was the way that people would interact. But so dad and I stop at a McDonald's. We were exhausted. It was the middle of summer, and so we're sweating, and we're just hot, and we're tired, and we're hungry after a long drive, after a long party. And we didn't do full face makeup, so it was just kind of like around our eyes and lips, so that we found that like the full face makeup actually scares kids pretty bad. So you do like just a light makeup, and the kids are it's you can interact better. But we would glue a nose on, like a foam nose. So I go to pick up my burger, and take a bite, and when I do, the sweat had loosened the latex glue, and the burger bumped the nose, and the nose just went like bloop, 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 rolled off the table and rolled all the way across the floor. And so I'm like, oh, my nose. And I get up and I go to pick up my nose, and I'm genuinely not thinking about the fact that I'm dressed like a clown, and I'm just actually just being myself, like kind of freaking out about the fact that my nose is rolling away. And every time I bend over to pick it up, I kick it. It keeps rolling. And so I'm chasing my nose all around the McDonald's. And I'm like, kind of freaking out about it. And everybody in the store is just cracking up. And I'm like, I'm not even registering why they're laughing at me. And it's like, it's a whole clown skit and it's not intentional.
Those are the
And
best
I
ones,
sit back
though.
at the table, and my dad is just laughing so hard, he's just jiggling, he can't stop laughing. The whole restaurant is full of people who just can't stop laughing, and I sit down, and I'm exhausted, and I put my nose on the table, and I sit there, and I'm trying to eat my burger, and then everybody in the restaurant laughed for, like, 10 minutes. It was the best, like, it was like one of the just natural, completely normal moments that you don't expect to happen that just happened, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
That's what's so beautiful about life is every once in a while you go to McDonald's to get something to eat and you see a clown that's kicking his nose all over the floor. And most people, they just look at that and say, oh, there you go. Okay, that's pretty cool. So I love the clowning aspect of life. And to me, it takes a special personality, like you said, because sometimes it can be a little trying. And I was actually, when you said your father was a birthday clown, that was one of the questions that came to my mind was, have there ever been any situations where parents got out of control, maybe a fight at a birthday party, maybe the clown had to get in the middle of some arguments or something like that between cousins? Anything like that ever happened in the clowning career?
I don't think there was anything necessarily that extreme, but there were times that were very trying. Dad would a lot of times, like, the parents would just kind of leave, go off drinking or something, and dad would end up being the babysitter for 50 kids.
Nice.
Those were and those were usually the parties that, like, didn't pay that well, and then he'd be really upset. And so when they would ask him back for the next part, the next year, he would be too busy. He wouldn't be able to do that one. Um, so he had a blacklist.
I'm
Um,
sure, and that's the truth that most people don't realize is even in the clown industry, you can get on that list if you don't act right. If you're not what you're supposed to be,
yeah,
even the clowns will boycott you. This is the
yeah,
era of being canceled,
be
and
canceled, right?
to get canceled by a clown, you've got to be pretty bad. That's unprecedented territory, really. I've never heard of anybody being canceled by a clown, but it's nice to know. Well, maybe I don't know if you've ever heard of Yucko the clown. This was a like an X-rated clown from back in the early 2000s. Racist, just he did all the bad things. And I always wondered, how does this guy go about this and not get beat up? But I honestly think it was because he put on the clown makeup. Nobody wants to hit a clown. You look really bad. It's like cutting in front of an old person in line, or being rude to someone that's being nice. I think sometimes with the clown makeup, you can maybe be a little bit more you can be a little different than you would be in regular life, and you can say some things that maybe wouldn't get you in as much trouble, which I'm sure as a clown at children's parties probably doesn't come into play as much. But maybe if you're a clown that's doing bachelorette parties and things like that,
Well,
always
that
wondered.
that actually leads me to probably what I actually had forgotten about it till you bring that up, and this will probably be my last clown story. But so I had done a party with my dad, and I was probably about 21, so your brain's not fully formed yet. So the part of your brain that makes the decisions, right, that has judgment, that thinks about the logical consequences of actions, isn't quite fully formed.
The 21-year-old brain is a wonderful
Yeah,
thing. I
yeah,
don't remember mine.
yeah. And so we had done a party, we made some money. And this is the fun thing about being in a small town is that, my dad's name was Henry Vernon Hatcher, but his nickname was Yogi, not just Yogi the Clown. It was Yogi. Everybody called him Yogi everywhere. And so he didn't have a business account under Yogi the Clown. It was nothing like that. People would write him checks as Yogi Hatcher, and he would sign them as Yogi Hatcher, and they would cash them as Yogi Hatcher because back then nobody cared.
Yeah.
you know so he had a check made out to Yogi Hatcher, and we went to the bank to cash it, and we walked in as clowns. And this was the bank that we always banked at. These ladies had known me since I was a little kid, you know um and we walked in, and I didn't connect that as we walked in, their buttholes tightened. You know what I mean? I mean, you can see it in your face when somebody's butthole tightens, you know?
Absolutely. If you're looking for it, you can always find the
I
identifiers
didn't
there.
quite see it, but looking back, I saw it. I
The
didn't.
flags were there.
Yeah, yeah. And and I didn't it took me a minute to understand what's going on. And and we walk in and we're making jokes because people like, oh, a clown walks in the bank. We're when you're in makeup, you're in character, whether you try to be or not. And honestly, to be completely honest, that character for my father and I is not that much different than who we are without the makeup. We You know what I mean? It's the character isn't a complete shift of who you are. It's just you don't have the degree of seriousness to who you are at all. You just kind of turn off the serious side is all. That's the only real difference. And so, we walk in the bank in clown makeup. The cashiers and the tellers, their buttholes tighten, and there's a little kid. Dad makes an animal balloon, which is default. You have to when there's a kid. I blow up a balloon, and I take off my hat and I rub it on my head, and I walk over and I stick it on the wall, and I say to this lady who has known me my entire life, "Hey, that's a stick up." And
It's like some things you just can't say. It's like using the word bomb in an airport.
right,
Trust me.
or saying hello to your friend Jack on the plane.
Exactly. Exactly. Hello is much more appropriate in that situation.
She goes, she like that butthole that tightened was now in her throat, and it was like, wait, I'm sorry. And my dad was like, Josh, why don't you go out to the car? Okay, Dad. Okay, Dad.
Sometimes it happens, and the bank tellers probably have that story, that they've been sharing for decades at this stage. Because, let me tell you about that time I almost got robbed by a gang of clowns with a balloon weapon of all things. And hey, everybody's got one of those, right? I mean, I've never been robbed by a clown, but I've got some similar situations in life, and that's what makes it so fun and unique and interesting is things like that. Luckily there was no security armed on site or anything like that, because what a terrible ending that would be, making a balloon animal for a child and ended up getting put to sleep because of it. So thankfully that didn't happen. You're here today to talk about this story, and I'm sure the bank tellers appreciated it after the fact. And they probably, from that point forward, anytime a clown walked in, they probably didn't think anything of it. And that's the way it should be. Clowns should bring joy, not fear.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah,
I love it.
That was something that we went through a lot. There's a lot of people afraid of clowns. Dad did a really good job at helping people break through that. When a lot of people are afraid of clowns. Dad would do a lot of research and trial and error. He used to wear a blue wig, and he had like bright blue on his suit, and then he found out that like the color blue, babies don't like the color bright blue. They like baby blue, but not bright blue. It's actually a scary color to them. So he changed his whole costume and got rid of the hat. And then when the movie It came out, he realized, okay, like the first, like the mini series It, not the new one. That was even worse. But he's like, okay, this full face makeup thing is making these kids can't handle it. I've got to do something different. And so like he would always hear his whole career, he would hear, you know, um, I'm afraid of clowns, but I'm not afraid of you. And when he had his when he passed away and we did his funeral, uh the whole we had to rent the fire hall because no church in town was big enough to hold all the people that wanted to come and pay their respects. And we had a big potluck, and everybody in town brought food, and somebody made little cookies that had like with his clown face, and everybody just told jokes, and we laughed, and yeah, we cried a little bit, but we called it a funeral instead of a funeral, because that really paid homage to my father, was to just have, we made balloon flowers, like instead of having like a big floral bouquet, we spent all night the day before making balloon flowers. I had just a massive wall of balloon flowers, and yeah, we had a great time to kind of honor him that way. So
That's the way to go right there. Have fun throughout life. And at the end, if you can get an entire room full of people laughing and telling everybody how great you were and how funny you were, you've done well. Mission accomplished for your time on this earth. And kudos to your dad. Bringing joy to children is something that, not enough people do that in this world. So it's great to hear stories about that. And I've never had a clown. I've had magician. You know what? Now that I think about this, I have had a circus clown on my podcast before, never a birthday clown. So multiple different types of clowns. Now I've kind of ventured off, and I'm a clown aficionado here on Keepin' It Rio. So
there you go.
That is pretty amazing. Before we started, okay, we'll veer off of the clowns now. I got you on that. But before we got hit with the record button here, the first thing I noticed was the background that you've got here in your studio, your home that you're working in. And you told me a little story about this and then kind of showed me a little bit about what was going on. So let's talk about that for just a second, because I think anybody watching this is probably thinking, man, that is a pretty cool background. I'd love to know the background on the background. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm in my living room. I guess I could pan the camera around if you want, but so I'll explain this part first. But so during COVID, I got laid off, and we knew that we wanted to redo our living room. I always wanted to do this. My wife is very gracious with my creativity.
Love it.
So I was laid off because everything shut down, and my company was like, hey, look, we can't sell anything. Nobody's buying anything. And I was laid off for a little while. And I said, we had like 70s paneling in here, and it was like, we painted over it, and it just looked nasty. It was time to redo it. And our ceiling was like drywalled popcorn ceiling, and it was bowed in and cracked. And whoever lived here before us had like smoked, so it was like yellowed. And so it was time to redo it. And what I said was, I want my house to like have character, and I wanted to do something different. So this wall here is like log ends, and I some of them I found myself. Some of them my friends started like collecting branches that fell off trees, and we sliced them and put them. I'll show you. The big log up here I found it in a garage at my last house, and I've held on to it. And they're all glued and like brad nailed into the wall. And it's painted black behind it so that it kind of gives it a little bit of depth. Looks like a log pile. Then my ceiling, if you can see, that is all barnwood and pallet wood, and I've got like a lighting beam that's just like a faux beam that's kind of dropped with like a fluorescent light that goes above it. And then all my walls are reclaimed lumber. That one over there is like a herringbone pattern that I did with various reclaimed wood. And then yeah, so that's what my living room looks like. And my wife was like, hey, I trust you, do whatever you want to do. A lot of times wives like to get involved in the decorating. And at first I was like, all right, like no pictures on the walls, because the walls themselves are the art. Then eventually she was like, I want to put family pictures up. So I said, that's fine, but just not on this wall. Every other wall you can do. So, but that was a really fun project, and lots of blood, sweat, and tears in it. I could actually walk around and I could point to every piece of wood and tell you where it came from. I could be like, that came from a barn that had been struck by lightning and blown apart and put back together 3 times. That was the story behind that piece of wood. That was my kid's bunk bed. That was the chicken coop that we used to have. That was, in the batch of pallets that I got from Tractor Supply. You know what I mean? Like I know every piece of wood pretty much and where it came from. And that was lumber that my dad had got from the lumber store in the town that he lived in, and he had it in his barn saving it for a project. So I took it and sliced it up, and I could point to every piece of wood and tell you where it came from.
That's the best part about doing a project like that is you were hands-on. You did the entire thing. And I think having that and being able to look at each individual piece and say, look, this was not something I bought from a big box store. This took a ton of creativity. It took a ton of time. It took a ton of effort. And nobody on this planet can say that they've got the same living room that you have. That's for sure.
I also had a lot of help from friends. So I think I mentioned that my wife's a preacher. She's actually a Free Methodist pastor, and the bishop, our bishop of the Free Methodist church, was going to come visit, and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to come stay with you guys." We're like, "Oh!" And it like when she announced that, I had just knocked a hole in the ceiling to figure out what was up there, right? And so, like, I was like, "I'll knock a hole in the ceiling," and I'm like, "Man, this is a mess." I wasn't going to work on the project right away. And now we have like a big wig coming to stay at our house in like a few months.
Some motivation. I
And
love
I'm
it.
like, so I called my friends and I'm like, guys, I have X number of weeks to get this project done. Uh, any of my buddies, you guys want to help me with this? And they're all like, you want to do what with your living room? I've always wanted to do that. And my wife would never let me. I'm in. So all my buddies, came and helped me with some of the work too, which was fun because they wanted to do a project like this that they wouldn't have the opportunity to do. So we like the ceiling, especially, we had a lot of fun with, a lot of help with, and that was a cool experience. Which is something I think I have a really great group of men in my life that if I need something and I let them know, they're there in a heartbeat. If they need something and they let me know, I'm there in a heartbeat. And I think that it's not something that I just have because I you know, said I wanted it. It's something I had to work at to develop. And I think every man needs that. You've got to have a group of guys that have your back, and you don't get it overnight. You have to work at developing it. And it takes sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you have to be vulnerable. I hate that word, but you got to be real with people, and you have to say, hey, look, this is what I'm going through, or I need help with this, or hey, how can I help you today? And you might have to listen to somebody talk about their feelings, which, we Gen Xers don't tend to like to do. Especially Gen X men, man, the only feeling we know is angst and anger, And so we're like, but just listen to somebody and actually take the time to spend time with them. And then you can build friendships so that when you have to redo your living room in 4 weeks, and your buddies are there for you.
Absolutely. That's definitely a skill that I have not mastered at this point in my life. I'm always the guy where it's like, hey, I'm going to be moving on Saturday. Who can help me out? And I come to find out that I can move everything in my house by myself with no help. I've done it like 6 different times now. And I'm at the stage where it's like, I'm not going to ask any of you deadbeats to help me because I know you're not going to. So it is good to have friends like that. And it's not that good to have no friends like that. But, it also helps me stay stationary. I don't move as frequently as I used to because I'm getting older and I don't like doing all that. So I
Yeah,
love
well,
that story.
I don't want to move either. That's where I'm at. I love this place, and I'm kind of like, I think if we ever do move, I don't know if I'll sell it. I think I'll turn it into an Airbnb so it can still be mine.
Yep. Yeah, there you go. You put all that work into it and it's unique. It's
I,
you and
I wish
it
I could
needs to
show
stay
you.
forever.
I wish I could show you my kitchen, but I'm plugged in, so I can't move. But the kitchen, the cabinets, my dad and I made those together, and they're made out of barnwood.
Nice.
And they're gorgeous. We did all of that, and the countertop is poured concrete that we made. We made them outside, then carried them in and placed them, and yeah, like uh yeah, that's my floor. By the way, we pulled up the carpet in the floor, and like it's like a hardwood, like it's like pieced together kind of poorly, and like they had just like painted around a rug at one point, right? And my wife's like, I think we need to refinish it. And I'm like, I think I like the look of this the way it is. Like it's ragged. You know what I mean? And I kind of like it. So that's kind of like, it's weird that it's that way, but like my coffee table is a Czechoslovakian rifle crate.
Nice. Again,
you
that's
know?
not something that too many people can say.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're
So
going for uniqueness, you've got that market on lockdown.
yeah, that's kind of the way like I like to do things. I like old stuff. I like stuff that has uh a history and a story to it, and that you know it's got wear and tear on it, and I think it means something, In my kitchen on the there's a a set of drawers, and one of the drawers has like a divot in it, right? And I happen to know that that piece of wood was a floorboard from a barn, and it was where the cow was being milked, and that was where the cow's hoof stood, And so when I pull
Nice.
a fork out of that drawer and I touch that spot in the wood, like it's just there's something to that, and it just I don't know, it brings me joy to kind of have that history and that yeah, it's a cool experience.
Absolutely, it is, my friend, and I appreciate that very much. I'm actually I'm a little jealous. I need to have a cool living room like that. I mean, this is my living room. It's all right, but
Well,
I could definitely upgrade.
well, you can come out here and sleep on the couch anytime you want, man.
I appreciate that very much. And hey, ask my friends. I might show up one day.
Let's do
So
it.
yeah, tell me a little bit about your podcast. We were just talking about that, and you mentioned you've got a podcast. Tell me about your experience with this crazy hobby. I've been doing mine for about 3 years now, and I love it. I've gotten to speak to some amazing people all over the world. I've had people from literally the most disaster prone area in the world, a little island in the middle of the Pacific that has no running water and no electricity, but somehow I was able to get a StreamYard connection there and talk to a lady. But I've talked to people from all walks of life. I've had an amazing time with it. Tell me a little bit about yours. What's the origin? How did you get into podcasting? What was the thing that led you to say, "Hey, let me do this"? And tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, so podcasting was a natural thing for me to want to do because I started out in broadcasting. I started out in radio when I was 14 years old.
Nice.
I was invited to help record commercials at a local radio station, and that was kind of the radio station's way of like recruiting to see, okay, this person has a good voice and they know how to use equipment, and then they would hire you to run the board for the Pirates games, the Pittsburgh Pirates games. And so then it was an AM radio station, WFRM AM 600. And so I would sit there at the radio station and I would push the buttons on the carts. So the advertisements were recorded on like an 8-track cassette. And so it would record a little tone after each ad. And then, so you would push a button, it would play till the tone and stop. So, you could sit there and you'd listen to when the announcers would tell you it was time to go to the station for a local commercial break. And then you would play the ads and you'd sign a little log saying that you played the ad and make minimum wage, which was like $4.25 an hour back then. And I loved it. And I was good at it. And so I've been in radio and journalism, my on and off a lot of my life. When I got out of it, I always knew that I still wanted to find a way to do it. And when podcasting came on the circuit, I'm like, I know I want to get towards this. I was also a writer, and so I started a blog called Manlyhood 11 years ago, and that really came from it was before my father died, but it came from the I seeing there was a lot of young men that I had mentored throughout my life as a youth leader, and they were really struggling when they hit adulthood. These guys were dying of heroin overdoses. They were, getting in trouble with the law. They were, all kinds of, their marriages were falling apart. And I recognized that, one, I felt that responsibility to continue mentoring them. And two, I've always felt this responsibility that I was fortunate to have a really good dad who loved me and taught me a lot of good lessons, right? And I always recognized and understood that I had a responsibility to help other young men that didn't have that opportunity. So that's what led me to start Manlyhood, and it started as a blog. And then as soon as I really got the equipment and the know-how to do podcasting, I started the podcast, and it's kind of grown from there. And I've done some awesome and amazing fun interviews as well. I've gotten to interview DC Glenn, who is the rapper from Tag Team. You
Nice.
remember
Whoop,
Whoop?
there it
There it is.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed him. It was shortly after like the Geico commercial Fantastic dude. Great interview. Interviewed Judge Joe Brown. That was a fun interview as well. I've talked to guys with hunting TV shows, deep sea fishermen. I most recently on the show I had a Machine Gun Preacher. Have you ever seen that movie, Machine Gun Preacher?
No.
It's this dude. His name's Sam Childers. He's from Pennsylvania, and he was like a hard living drug dealing biker, and he meets Jesus, and his life is transformed. And some preacher like says, "You're going to go to Africa," and he's like, "I'm not going to Africa." And then he believes God tells him, "Yes, you're going to Africa." So he goes to Africa, and while he's there, like doing, like a mission trip kind of thing, like he thinks he's going there to like build houses and feed kids. And there's a war going on, and he goes out and he sees this kid that's been blown up by a landmine, and there's only half of the kid there.
Mm.
And they'd given him a gun for security, so he then starts going and hunting the rebels to free the rest of these kids that have been abducted and forced to fight. So he goes and he frees these kids and then helps them to like become kids again instead of soldiers. And he's been doing that for like 20 years. And he goes to Africa, and he comes back here and he raises money to go back and do more. And he's an amazing dude. So I had reached out to him, and then he actually came here to our town and did an event, and recorded him here at the studio or in the living room, and had a great conversation with him. I've got an interview coming up that'll be a few weeks from now. I've done the recording with a guy named Victor Marks. He was on the Sean Ryan show. If you've ever heard of that show, which is like one of the number 2 podcasts. It's number 2 podcast in the world. Victor Marks was on there. He's actually the world's fastest gun disarmer.
Nice. That's a good thing to know.
Yeah. He also goes all over the world freeing people in sex slavery, and like just phenomenal dude. And like just phenomenal dude. His life was hell. Like when he grew up, like the things that he endured, he was tortured and abused as a kid, and went on to become just an awesome man. And so I've gotten to talk to just phenomenal people, phenomenal men. Sometimes I'll interview women too if their message is something that helps men. So I do interviews, but I also do some solo shows as well, just kind of sharing the things that I've learned. And I just want to help men become even better men. I actually believe that to be a man is a good thing, despite what our culture tells us today. Our culture loves to show, make men look like Homer Simpson or villains. You know what I mean? We're either stupid mooks or we're, evil rapists. And like, there's no room for the fact that men can be virtuous, heroic, brave, kind, good fathers. Like the culture doesn't want to acknowledge and accept that. And I think that the vast majority of men are good men. And we're just constantly being told that is toxic. Right. And while I do believe that the concept of toxic masculinity exists, I hate the word toxic masculinity, because I think that it's become this cultural phrase that now the only time people talk about masculinity is when they're talking about toxic masculinity. So it becomes a game of word association, right? And so that's all that people hear when you say masculine. In fact, when you Google masculinity, what comes up is toxic masculinity. That's not right. That's not good. We need more of the opposite of that. We need people to Google masculinity, and we need them to think of bravery, courage, virtue, the good things. And I think it's time we start reclaiming that so that we can make a difference in the world and get back to what it should be. And, so I do believe, to start off, I believe that being a man is a good thing. So I want to help men become even better at that, because I also believe that every person has a dark side, and we all have to fight like hell against our demons and our dark side so that we can be even better. So like I said, I think that being a man is good, but I know in my life I've got crap in here, and I need to deal with the crap, or else that crap will deal with me. And so that's the kind of stuff that I try to help men do, is to, What do I do with all these thoughts that are racing in my head? They're telling me all the wrong things. How do I get that straight so that I can be the husband I need to be, so that I can raise my kids so that they make the right choices instead of the wrong choices? How do I, um, how do I get over the fact that I've made this mistake? How do I forgive myself for the stupid things I've done? How do I, how do I level up in my career so that I can make more money? Like, that's the kind of stuff that keeps men up at night, right? That we don't talk about, that we need to be able to talk about.
I agree with that 100%. And I think it's awesome that you've got the platform to be able to do that. And the reality is, I have a lot of people on my podcast, and I ask this question a lot because a lot of the people that I associate with are very similar to what we're discussing here. We've formulated some kind of a program. For me, it was always, I liked Howard Stern when I was a teenager, and once this became available, it was like, wow, a guy with no ability, no education, nothing can go buy a microphone and can go buy a camera. And all of a sudden, here I am. I'm a podcaster. And the thing that I really love about it is you don't really think about it while you're doing it. You're doing it because you want to put something good out into the world. And you hope, obviously, that people are going to pay attention and listen, and that you're going to be able to help change lives. But for me, the most rewarding part of this entire thing is when somebody reaches out and says, hey, I saw this episode. That story really hit me. It impacted my life. It reminded me of something that happened to me personally. Thank you. You taking the time to do that podcast, to seek out that guest, and to have that conversation. It positively impacted my life. And I always like to ask people, have you had any situations like that throughout the course of your podcast where maybe just a complete random person, you have no idea who they are, they reach out to you and say, Josh, man, like, I was having a horrible day. And, even to the extreme points of like, dude, I was thinking about not being on this planet anymore. And then something I saw that you put out there changed my world, changed my thoughts, made me happy to be here again. Have you ever had any of those?
I get it. Those moments come to me at the moments that I need them, because sometimes you do it and you keep doing it and you feel like, man, I'm running into a wall here, right? Like, I'm not getting, like, is anybody paying attention, right? And so back in October, on Halloween night, we do this thing. Our church works with another church, and we do a trunk or treat. Have you ever seen those? And for whatever, like, a lot of times the trunk or treat is like a Halloween alternative. No, like, for whatever reason, we do it right in the middle of downtown, and like, we get thousands of people come through. Normally it's like just the church kids. Like, no, like, we have everybody in our little town comes through it, because we do a really good job, and a lot of people come through. We give them a lot of candy. They have a great time. And so it's become, something that everybody in town really enjoys. Except all the people at the edges of town who don't get trick-or-treaters. Sorry, guys.
There's always got to be that one house at the end of the road that
I'm
nobody wants to
sorry.
walk
I'm
down
sorry.
there.
I didn't mean to steal all you trick-or-treaters with our trunk or treat. Anyway, I'm sitting there, and I had just been kind of discouraged by, like, is anybody paying attention, And this dude walks by with his kid, and he goes, oh, hey, you, I know you. I've been watching your stuff on the interwebs. Dude, it's really making a difference. It's really helping me, man. I've been going through a lot of stuff, and what you've been saying is exactly what I need to hear, man. Thank you. And, and I'm like tearing up, I'm like, that's exactly what I needed to hear at the exact right moment. And I get that frequently. I'll get messages where guys will let me know, or I'll run into somebody in town, and because we have like a Facebook group too, where the guys will interact, and I spam people into it all the time, and some people don't like that, but a lot of guys end up appreciating it. They'll be in the group and they'll let me know. I had a guy let me know who's actually got a successful podcast. He was actually just mentioned recently at the very beginning of a Joe Rogan podcast. There's a podcast episode with Greg Overton, who's an artist, and Joe Rogan is talking about listening to Greg Overton on a podcast, and then Greg Overton shout outs his friend who helped him get his artwork on Zippo lighters. Zippo is made here in my hometown in Bradford, Pennsylvania. And so he's like,
Shout
yeah,
out to
that's my buddy's.
Zippo.
Yeah, that's my buddy's podcast, Justin Jones. So on the Curious Jones podcast. And that was the podcast that Joe Rogan was listening to that day. And so and it was funny because I was sitting on, I had just taken a quick hiatus and I was sitting on an interview with Justin Jones that I hadn't released yet. I'm like, crap. So I finished editing it and got it up the next day so I could post it because I'm like, I got to capitalize on that 5 minutes of fame.
Yeah,
but
as heard on the Joe Rogan
right,
Experience. I love that.
This guy was just mentioned on Joe Rogan. But Justin told me that, you know, he's in that. He says, people always add me to Facebook groups, and they always, you know, he says I usually leave them or mute them. He says, with yours, I actually turned on the push notifications because he says, I know I don't interact much. I know I just kind of lurk. But when someone gets in there and they say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and then I see all the guys come alongside and encourage him, like, a lot of times it's the thing I needed to hear that day. Like, it actually helps me to see that encouragement. Like I'm proud to be a part of something like that. Yeah, that was a pretty cool experience to hear that from somebody that, you know, it was awesome. So yeah, that's pretty neat.
It makes all the work that you put into the podcasting and all the stuff that we do and all the second guessing, it makes it all worthwhile. You get one of those moments, and like I said, it always happens when you need it the most, when you're just thinking to yourself, man, this is a waste of time, it's a waste of money, nobody's paying attention. And then you start getting this feedback, and it really can kind of help just fuel that fire, and it makes you want to do it more. It makes you want to go find different, more diverse guests and just keep continuing to put that content out, because you never know, you know, there's going to be somebody that watches this episode and they're going to be having a bad day, and they're going to hear a story about your dad dressed up as a clown getting pulled over by the cops, you know, rolling down the window and having green toxic clouds coming out. And that's going to crack them up. And they're going to say, you know what? This is a good world. I'm happy to be here. This is all right after all. In spite of all the bad things going on, we can always find something fun to smile at. And if we can provide that for a random person at any point in time, all the effort is worth it at that stage in my book.
Dude, laughter in general. And that's why when you talked about what your podcast was, I was excited, because laughter in general is so freaking good for you. Like, it actually, I don't know if you've ever done this, and I want to encourage you to do this. Like, when we're done, I want you to do this. And if you're listening, I want you to try this. The best place to do it is like, go in a parking lot where nobody's paying attention to you, like in your car, because you have a little bit of soundproofing, and then force yourself to laugh for like 30 seconds, set a timer, and do a fake laugh, but force yourself to laugh for like 30 seconds. And like, what you'll find is, like, after like 15 or 20 seconds, your laughter becomes real laughter, right? Because you start laughing at how stupid you sound. And then you can literally feel all of these, you can literally feel it. The chemicals in your brain switch, and they just start dumping these chemicals down your body. Like, you can feel them like going through your head. And it's like a high, not like drugs, because it doesn't dull your senses. It actually heightens your senses. Your whole body feels good, and you feel amazing. You feel sharp, and you feel this sense of relief. And all you had to do is fake laugh for a few minutes, you know?
It's amazing how that can, it's amazing how that can change your entire day. It can change your outlook on life. And I mean, I've had moments in my life where I've been, you know, depressed. We all go through things. Everybody has trials and tribulations in life. Some are, you know, harder than others to deal with. You know, loss of a parent, something like that. And there are times where I will literally just start laughing randomly in moments where I probably shouldn't be laughing, quite honestly, and probably would be frowned upon by some people, some of the things I laugh at. But you get all that out, and you feel so much better after you do it. And to me, that's the whole point of life. You know, yesterday is a great example for me. I was feeling really good, and I was going to lunch yesterday, and I had to stop at the eye doctor. And I go into this eye doctor and, whatever. They smile and laugh. Hey, good morning. How you doing, sir? Well, I was feeling pretty good yesterday. So I start making my little jokes, and the girl was, asking me, are you going to be paying for this with insurance, or is this going to be cash? And I said, well, I wish it was insurance, but the guy that I work for, my company, he's a prick. He doesn't care about me at all. And she says, well, that's terrible. What are you going to do? I said, I don't know, because I'm the guy that owns the dang company. So I have to change myself. And they start laughing, and you sign the receipt. And I said, this receipt today is worth $186. A couple weeks from now, it's probably going to be worth nothing. And she's laughing, and we're just having a good time about it. And at the end of the day, the girl said, you know what? You made my day today just by coming in here. The energy that you brought made us feel better. And we weren't even having a bad day, but now we're having a good day. And I feel like that's what we're put on this earth for. Some of us, not everybody's got a sense of humor, and not everybody can make that happen. But I feel like if you've got the ability to make people smile, you'd be wasting what God gave you if you didn't go out there and make an honest effort just to be the goofy person that, that people like to be around, because when you're around, it inspires them to feel good. So definitely loving that. And that's why I do my podcast. It's for me, but it's also for other people that do watch it. And when you get that feedback from them, boy, it makes it all worthwhile. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time and the effort that you do put in. We have really, we've kind of had a long episode here. I try to keep them 45 minutes to an hour. I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface, and I look up and we're already over an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start tailing off a little bit and leading us to the finish line. The question I always love to ask to end my podcast with every guest that I ever have on here, and today I think it's going to be a great question because you've got a lot, is if someone is watching our show today, my podcast guests, or my audience is very diverse, but I do have a roofing company. I have a lot of guys that are, regular Joe type people that get into these situations, and roofing is a very, it's a strange industry. There are a lot of people that die. There are a lot of suicides. There are a lot of overdoses. There's a lot of depression. In this industry, a lot of things can go wrong, and it can destroy your life in just a matter of seconds if the wrong thing happens to you. But a lot of guys get on here and they say, hey, man, I love the positivity. I love what you're bringing. You've got a podcast that's going to be bringing the exact same energy, the same positivity, and you're going to help guys. If someone's watching my show right now and they say, man, this guy Josh is cool, man. He built his living room out of, pieces of wood, and he can tell you where each individual piece came from. He's making people laugh. How can people follow you and your journey and, watch your podcast, listen to your podcast? What are some of the ways that people can get a hold of you and, maybe be inspired or maybe laugh by something that you put out?
Yeah, for sure. So if you go to manlyhood.com, you can find our socials there and follow. We're on all the socials. If you look up Manlyhood, they come up. Any of the Manlyhood Mancast, that's the name of the podcast. It's going to change though. I'm going to drop the Mancast part and just call it Manlyhood. But if you type in Manlyhood, it comes up, and I'd love to connect with you. Send me a message if you want. If you're struggling and you just need somebody to chat with, for sure, reach out, join the Manlyhood Man Cave, which is our private Facebook group. The cool thing about that is it's a group where the point of the group is guys helping each other, encouraging each other. So, and if anybody's not, if you bully them, if you're like sometimes people think that they can help you by bullying you, right? Like,
not everybody's ready for tough love.
Yeah. And it's not, you like, dude, I'm overweight and I need to lose weight. You're not going to make me feel better about myself and change by calling me, a fatso, but you say, man, you can do this. I believe in you. It's going to encourage me. That's what we do in the group. We encourage each other. Do we tell the truth? Is sometimes some truth we don't want to hear? Yes, we tell the truth. Sometimes it's truth you don't want to hear, but it's always done with the hope of encouraging you and helping you. And so we want to, if you need that in your life, come join the Manlyhood Man Cave on Facebook. Type it in, join the group, answer a couple of questions. We'd be glad to have you. But that's only for men. So if you're a lady, you can't join that. You can listen to the podcast. You can interact on our other stuff. If you are a lady, I have a lot of ladies that actually tell me that they really appreciate what we're doing too. So, it's personal development. Anybody can learn from what we're doing. So
there you go, my friend. Changing lives and helping people to have a better perspective on their own. That's why we're here. And one thing I do have to do before we end our episode today, and I do this every episode, I have a sponsor, which is roofer.com. And I'm sure you've probably never heard of roofer.com, but in the next 1 minute or so, you're going to learn everything there is to know about this program.
I need a roof, so I'm glad to hear about it.
Well, yeah, here you go. This is my sponsor. They have been for the last 2 years. And Roofer is a program that was designed by actual roofers 8 years ago. A couple buddies of mine who have become very large in this industry saw some of the needs that roofing companies were maybe lacking in, some things to help be more efficient. We're roofers. We're not doctors. We're not lawyers. We're guys who sometimes write notes on napkins at our McDonald's lunch, and then we lose them. So they saw a need for several things. Measurement reports, things like that were the first thing that they did. But now Roofer has evolved. And over the past couple months, in the past year, they have come out with a fully developed customer relationship management program. And if it's okay with you, Josh, before we end our program, I would like to give my shout out to Roofer, and I'd like to play their 20-second video that I play every episode. And when this is done, you're going to know everything about this. So you ready to learn a little bit about roofer.com?
Let's go.
Here we go, my man.
We're Roofer. We know that managing a roofing business can be chaotic, so we created a single platform with all the tools you need to easily run your roofing business. Stop switching between multiple different softwares and experience streamlined operations from lead to payments in hours instead of days. Visit roofr.com to get started for free today.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, my sponsor, Roofer. I love them to death. I'm going to go do a report right now because I've got a couple appointments this afternoon for my roofing. And I would definitely like to take one moment to say thank you very much, Josh, for taking the time to be here today. It's early in the morning. It's Saturday. I always love these kind of podcast episodes where I meet people. And as we go through the story, you really start to appreciate and learn more and more about who the person is. I can tell that you're a very high quality individual. You're doing a lot to help people. And it means a lot to me that you took time today to be on a random podcast for some guy that you had never met before. You didn't know if I was going to be a douchebag when this started. And maybe I have been. I don't know. Maybe at the end, you're going to say, man, that guy, he sucked. But I try to be welcoming and I try to have a good time with it. And hopefully you've enjoyed the episode. I thank you for that very much. And obviously, all the people that watch Keepin' It Rio, I joke at the end of every episode and say it's going to be millions of people that see this. It'll probably be 1,000 years from now and we'll probably both be long gone, but we're going to be impacting lives for generations to come. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that. So before we check out, do you have any final words, any words of wisdom you'd like to end the Keepin' It Rio episode, Keepin' It Rio episode with?
No, man, I just want to say, I appreciate you. You're doing good work. I love the idea of not only keeping it real, but keep it real. And I think that's what we need to do. Be honest, tell the truth. And I feel like, yeah, you've been a great host. I really appreciate the time you've given me. And I appreciate that you are interviewing all kinds of people about all kinds of things. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, roofing is boring. And truth of the matter is nobody outside of roofing gives a crap about roofing. So if I'm going to go after Joe Rogan, and that was my number one goal when I started this, is I'm coming to get Joe. I got the microphone that he uses, so he won't have any excuses. And if you're going to do that, you've got to appeal to more people than just your little inner circle. So it's a comfort zone thing for me. And I really enjoy meeting some of the folks I do. You're right up there at the top of the list, my friend. I've had a great day, a great episode here. I thank you. I thank everybody. Like I always say, share, like, tell your friends, tell your families, go outside, start screaming, Keepin' It Rio. And if anybody asks you what the hell's wrong with you, why are you screaming that? Tell them all about the podcast. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I end it with the cheesiest, corniest tagline in the history of podcasting, potentially in the history of the world, which is, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, keep on keeping it Rio. We'll see you guys next time.